You're listening to the DownShift podcast, taking you trackside for all things motorsport. We're four mates from Melbourne breaking down the races, the drama, and everything in between, all with a little banter and a lot of passion. If you love motorsport and cars as much as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always on the grid with us. And if you really want to join the team, leave us a 5-star review and support the show through Patreon for exclusive content and bonus perks. So it's lights out, drop the clutch, and let's get racing. Welcome to the Downshift, and we're reviewing the China 2025 Grand Prix, which was a lights out, and what the hell just happened? We're starting with some breaking news, which, Happy, would you like to share with us?
G'day, everyone. Yeah, sure. We just found out overnight, actually, that 3 cars were disqualified. So both Ferraris disqualified and Pierre Gasly from Alpine. So, I think it was the first time both Ferraris have been DQ'd for a very long time. So that was not what they expected. Hamilton was because of excessive plank wear, and that's there's like a wooden plank under the car, and that can wear down a bit, but there is a limit. The limit's 9 millimeters, and his was 8.5. So half a millimeter of plank depth caused that disqualification. Leclerc was underweight by 1 kilo, so they weighed the car without fuel. Should be 800 kilos. He was 799, even after they replaced his broken front wing with a fresh one. And Gasly was underweight by 1 kilo as well. So, 3 DQs.
Yeah, it was quite funny that Leclerc losing the side plate on his wing, Hamilton said, I think I've just hit someone. Yes, it was your teammate, or it was your teammate that hit you.
Yeah, but he got kicked off the curb, didn't he? They reckon he got pushed sideways when he hit the ripple strip on the side.
Pushed or jumped. I can't remember whether they said it actually just moved. Yeah.
All completely irrelevant to McLaren fans. Well done, Oscar, on his great race victory.
Yeah, if you're an Oscar fan, it was a pretty boring race because you didn't see much of him.
We saw him start and we saw him get over the line at the end. So congrats.
Yeah, you saw him start and then it's 3 laps to go. We better show some footage of him driving around out front.
Well, occasionally they in the distance, so it was okay because you could see him. He was well in the distance of the other people they were showing on the camera, so that worked out all right.
Once he started lapping people, you saw him again.
And you look at the quiet achievers on the top 3. So you've got Oscar, who just ran a very, very tidy, clean race and was out in front. And you've also got George Russell, who you really didn't hear much about George either, and he's just pulled into third place. And really lucky that Lando, who had brake fade at the tail end of the race, George was pushing, and had it only been a couple more turns, would have taken Lando to take second in regards to the race.
Yeah, close. Nearly, Mercedes nearly got in there, but I think McLaren still had pace in hand. So when Lando had to build a gap from George to make sure they wouldn't get undercut if the Mercedes was to pit, he pushed forward towards Oscar. Oscar was told to lift his pace. He pushed forward again. So they were just managing tyres and definitely looked a stronger car for sure.
I do find it interesting that the race engineer for him was saying, mate, stop pushing the brake pedal. There's no more left in it on that last lap. I think he was almost engine braking on a part of it, or braking fronts only, because there was nothing left in that pedal. And they were sounding quite concerned over the radios to him that stop pushing the brakes as hard as you are, or stop doing it. So he certainly, that last lap, he lost about 5 seconds on that last lap.
And that's when the Sky coverage cut to his onboard, and he was just coasting. It looked like he was coasting into corners. He probably had his brake all the way down to the floor, but not a good feeling as a driver when your brake starts to go. That's not good at all.
Isn't that just another way for the race engineers to tell them to go faster?
Brake less. Use more throttle.
Fortunately, when you've got the race engineer who's saying to you, we've talked about this, it's better to finish second than not at all. It also speaks to the Lando's mindset as well. The fact that he's pushing and they're actually having to tell him, you need to pull off because otherwise you're not going to finish the race. I think as we talk about the difference between the drivers, and you look in regards to McLaren, is you've got Oscar, who is the stable, sensible hand within the team. He's not fazed by the pressure. He'll just go and do what's required and be consistent in regards to his performance. Whereas Lando was really concerned around, I need to get the points, and so wanting to be able to push hard. And you could see that he was visibly upset by the fact that he had got second place and didn't get first. And at the end of the race, you saw the reaction you saw, his demeanour, even to the point when they got into the cool-down room, where he's sort of he's thrown his hat at Oscar, or at a level of frustration.
Yeah, I think it was a bit more playful than anything. And looking at some of the interviews after the race, I think Lando was pretty happy that he got second in the end, and it was a good team result. And he knew himself, and he said it in those interviews later, that he didn't maximise the car on that track like Oscar was able to. So I think he knew that second was probably the best he was going to get, unless he could get past Oscar at the start. But yeah, they still had a good celebration at the end, sprayed some champagne. It was a good team photo. Everyone's pretty happy. And yeah, lucky to get second. And it was good that they have that good communication with their engineers, and Lando did listen. But you're right, he's a bit more emotional than Oscar, but he still did the right thing and got the car home.
It never really looked like Lando was a real threat, though, to taking over Oscar.
No, I don't think so. I think Oscar had the pace on him.
If Lando was in front, at the way his car was at the end, Piastri still would have passed him. Given the state of his car, I don't think he would have actually been able to challenge if Piastri was up his butt, because he couldn't brake. So he would have had to pull off, and Piastri still would have got over the line. Based on how the cars were at the end of that race there, I don't think he would have actually been able to hold off Piastri, even if he was being challenged.
Piastri was actually in line to take over Lando at the Australian Grand Prix. That was where it was getting exciting before he came off worse. But it really looked like Piastri was going to really challenge Lando in those last dozen or so laps.
Yeah, he had the pace. And someone commented that Oscar has looked the strongest for the past 2 rounds. He just made that one mistake coming off that corner at Melbourne at the last turn. If it wasn't for that, he seemed quickest. He seemed the most composed. But yeah, I think when you've got two drivers, in the same car that are operating at a similar level on China, like historically, that track's been good for overtaking. But with that resurface, I think we saw on the weekend that the tyre degradation was so high. If you were following someone, and even if you pushed hard for one lap to catch up, it would really overheat the tyres. So it was pretty hard to overtake. So even if Lando was in front of Oscar and Oscar had slightly better pace, ignoring the brake issue, I think it would have been very difficult for Lando to get past.
It was also interesting too, if you were listening to the team radios and the chatter that was going on, there was some very funny comments that came past from some of them, especially one from Albon's team of like, we're happy with the tyres now, and Albon responds, I'm good. I'm better than everyone else. Let's relax. I'm very comfortable. I thought that was actually, given his position, all that, he was absolutely just throwing it out there. The other one was, I think it was the Ferraris when they were following the Mercedes. And the comment was that thing's an absolute jet coming out of like turn 7 or 6 or something like that. And they said, we can't catch it. Goes around the corner and...
Dragster,
yeah. Like I said, it was like a dragster coming out of 13, which is interesting.
Or even when Alonso's tyre caught for like the brake thing, and the guys behind is going, his brake's on fire, and then no one else had seen it yet, and all of a sudden start seeing the smoke coming out. So yeah, the radio play between the teams on the weekend was probably the most entertaining part in between, the start and the last 3 laps.
And they successfully blanked out all the swear words. Like, that was not that difficult to do, seemingly. And I've also seen commentary about how there was just such a big fuss that was made about all the swearing late last year and all of that, and it really is quite a simple, seemingly such a simple answer to it.
Yeah, F star. That's it. And they did that, Oscar was letting a few fly in the car as he was getting around. So yeah.
Well, respectfully, as he said, I just did a little scream in my helmet, and I saved everyone's eardrums from that. So he's, put that to himself, and then he's got back on the radio to say that was the hairpin of my life. So
I think it's the most emotion we've seen out of Oscar Piastri ever, but he still didn't react that well.
He's a pretty cool customer, isn't he? Like, I've seen, memes of where they go, this is Oscar when he's up, ecstatically happy, and this is when he's really upset. It's like it's the same picture in both shots, like no difference.
Very laid back, which is good. You've got to stay calm. Like in situations where it's difficult, tense, there's high pressure, he doesn't get rattled, he just delivers. So yeah, did a really good job.
And as we wrap up the talk about radio chatter, I love that Tom Stallard got on the radio, and of course the teams go to this great effort of keeping their strategy secret. We've got plan A, B, C, all the way through to Z, and Tom's got onto the radio to Oscar and said, so Oscar, do you think we're going to be able to do plan A? And Oscar's gone, yeah, I think we can do one stop.
Let the cat out of the bag.
So, Happy, you mentioned about tyre degradation, and looking in regards to it, this is where coming into China, a new tarmac, so more abrasion on the tyres, and we saw some of that graining on the front left, which is naturally what will happen being a right-hand track. But as we saw there, is that a lot of the teams were talking about two-stop strategies and thinking that they're going to need to go through a lot of changes. But we then started to see the new tyre compounds performing well. So, Lockie, you were seeing that?
Yeah, it was interesting as they were traveling. They were saying we've got a bit of grain in, and then I think it might have even been. But he goes, "Oh no, my tire's actually getting better again." So it actually then the graining came back off again, almost like it resurfaced itself again, and then he was off again. So it was quite interesting to see that they were all starting to get worried, and all of a sudden the engineers went, "Just wait, redid itself, realigned itself basically, and then they were able to continue on for another 10, 15 laps in the same tires. So that was actually quite interesting to see that part.
Yeah, it's a tough weekend for the tyre guys because the sprint race, all the teams used the medium tyre and it degraded fairly quickly. I think the track temp was about 39, 40 degrees, so it was a warm track as well. And then coming into the race on Sunday, we saw some teams move their setup a little bit, like Ferrari did. Liam Lawson started from the pits and they completely changed his setup to try and make that car a bit softer and less on the edge for him.
That worked well.
Didn't work well. We can talk about that later. But during the race, the leading teams had the advantage of watching some of the guys, like I think it was Ocon and one or two others who started on the hard tyre. That actually lasted quite a long time, and they worked out that the race pace was better on the hard and it was more durable. So the one stop became an option later on, especially as the weight comes down off the car. Like they start the race with the car full of fuel to do 300 Ks, but you can use that medium up for the first sort of 15 to 20 laps, which is what McLaren and most of the teams did, move to the hard. And then it was just a game at that point of going, well, who's going to blink first? Who's going to try the two-stopper? Hamilton came in with not that many laps to go. I think he had about 14 laps to go at the end.
19,
was about 16 seconds behind Verstappen. Didn't make that much headway. So I think from about that point on, McLaren and Mercedes would have known that their best bet was just to stay out, and actually turned out okay. We didn't see any tyre blowouts or issues. The degradation was not as bad as they thought.
Well, I think they were waiting for Russell to blink first, and if he was going to pit, then the McLarens would pit after that. But he didn't pit, and they kept going. So they went, well, if he's not going to, we're not going to.
I think that's when McLaren really demonstrated their performance advantage, because if Russell was close to Lando and Lando was close to Oscar, then if Mercedes had pitted, McLaren would have had to have pitted Oscar first to cover the Mercedes the first lap, and then Lando would have had to have gone around a whole nother lap while Russell had fresh tyres, and then would have been undercut. So Mercedes could have put them under real pressure, but McLaren said to Lando, you got to get a 4-second gap ahead of Russell. Piastri moved forward as well, so Lando didn't have dirty air. So at will, the McLarens just seemed to be able to pull ahead, make a bit of a gap, give themselves some safety margin. So it was quite a strong display from the McLarens. I think, Zach was playing it down a bit after the race, saying maybe it was a 10th or 2 difference, but I suspect it was slightly more than that. They look really good.
And it's funny that you see, and one of the things that sort of caught my attention was that Lance Stroll became a bit of a benchmark through this race as well. So it started off with, as we're talking about the sprint race, that there was a comment from James Vowles going that, looking at Lando Norris's performance in the sprint, he said even Lando couldn't get past Stroll. A great start for Lando. But then when we got into the main race, is we had 3 drivers who started on hard, so Stroll, Behrman and Lawson. And the teams were using Stroll as that benchmark to be able to see how those hard tyres were performing. So Stroll actually did 36 laps on the hards. So the teams were able to say, well, actually, the hards are lasting a lot longer than we anticipated. So we should be able to do one stopper and stretch that out to the end of the race.
And he was still keeping pace on those hards. I mean, at the pace they were going at, but they weren't degrading to the point where he was losing that much of the lap time towards the end of it. So they could see that the quality of them was still staying there. So it was worth chucking them on and taking the punt.
Yeah, looking at the lap times towards the end of his stint, so it wasn't as if there was at 30, 40 laps, there was a big cliff that the tyres fell off. The pace was still reasonable.
And then if we look at other notable changes as well, if I look at wings, we were talking about flexi wing for the back, but it all seemed to be about the front wing for this. And so we saw that obviously Charles clipped Lewis at the start of the race and lost the end plate. But then also at lap 47, we had Yuki seemed to have a explosion on his front wing and just snapped.
Yeah, it just sort of popped out, didn't it? Yeah. It was like they're looking at going, oh, who's he hit? And they're looking at the replay, and it just showed him coming down the back straight, was it, or one of the straights, and it just popped up and blew out and sat there.
Yeah, very rare failure.
Yeah. Well, I think I heard the commentary saying that all those wings they're load tested and stress tested, and I think even FIA might be doing some of that work as well to make sure that they are, to spec. So probably not seen that happen in a long time.
It was quite interesting that they couldn't actually get that off either. They took them an extra couple of seconds to actually get that nose cone off. They struggled in comparison to the way the other ones had come off in the past. I reckon it took them an extra 2.5 seconds to actually get that done and get the new one back on.
It was a shame for those two cars. They went for the two-stop strategy, I think, and didn't do very well in the end. But different to Leclerc, because you mentioned Leclerc, KT. He clipped the rear of Hamilton's car, lost an end plate on the side of his wing, and I don't know if he gained speed or not, but Leclerc definitely had a pace advantage over Hamilton for that race, and Lewis knew it. But it didn't seem to slow him down. They said 20 or 30 points of downforce, which I think is 2 or 3%. I think that's how they would convert it. But it's a fair bit of downforce they reckon he lost, but it really didn't affect him. And it was on the front left of the car too, which is the tyre that would grain up. So to have less downforce on that, you would expect more scrub from the front tyres when you turn, but I don't know, he didn't seem to get it. It was a bit of a mystery, that one.
Well, it was funny listening to the commentators saying, "Oh, all these all these engineers and that who's developed these side wings will be crushed now because it's made no difference after it's broken off." And they're going, "Oh, but we put so much time into this." And
why have an end plate if it doesn't do anything? Yeah, why have one?
It's a new design for Ferrari.
Well, originally they were worried about how much time they were going to lose to replace it. They're going, let's work out how much time we're going to lose, because it's going to be slower. And when do we work out? Do we go, well, no, we've actually got to pull you in and change it over? And they go, well, we're actually doing better, so we don't have to touch it at all. Let's just keep going.
That's it. If it takes an extra 6 seconds to change it, then you've got to lose 6 seconds of performance in the car. But it just didn't look like they'd lost any.
Wasn't losing anything. But it's like, I wonder a bit, they talk about the flexi wing and, the wings not being able to spec. Like that front wing looked to have a bit more flex on it, like it was lower to the ground when it came around corners, whether that was just, I don't know how much of that side part, reinforces that or stops that. But I was wondering whether at one point in time, maybe there would be the FIA might step in and go, well, hey, your wing's actually over flexing now compared to what it should be doing. But clearly it wasn't an issue.
They don't test it during the race, but I think the the only concern would be if they thought the wing could break and a piece could come off and hit another driver or something like that. But if they determine that it's safe structurally, it's not going to break any further, then I guess they did, because they let him continue without changing the wing.
It got close to the ground, but it never really hit the ground.
Yeah, I don't think they can ping you if it happens to flex more and you get an advantage out of it in an accident, provided it's not going to cause extra damage on the car. I don't think they can go, well, no, you've got to change that because we think you get an advantage after an accident on the tracks.
Yeah, it wasn't by design.
And I presume the end plate gave it some structural rigidity because, it did sag down and seemed to touch the ground down the back straight. But you see, as soon as they braked and lifted and the aero force came off it, it lifted straight back up. But yeah, it was still fast without the end plate.
There would have been a lot of discussion in the background between Ferrari and the FIA, convincing the FIA that it was stable, it wasn't going to disintegrate or cause any safety issues. So that would have all been happening behind the scenes, obviously watching it for the next few laps to see how it was holding, and then being able to make sure that, well, from Ferrari's perspective is it worth 6 seconds to be able to change it over? What I also thought there was some real driver maturity in regards to this is that Lewis was the one who then got on the radio and said, Charles is actually going faster than me. We need to let him past. And so therefore it was Lewis who put forward to let Charles go past him because he was actually doing better. And then the pit was actually saying, can you hold back to let Charles pass? He said, no, let Charles catch me and then I'll let him past. And that's what happened. And it was actually a really sensible, smart move.
That was the funny part. They said Charles can pass and goes, yeah, as soon as he catches me, he can pass me. But until then, no.
And the interesting part was that we didn't hear that first, we didn't hear Hamilton saying that. We only heard the second part is let Charles pass. And everyone's like, oh, he's letting Charles pass. And it was a whole lot of, well, maybe not controversy, but it's, some talking points around that. And it's like, well, hang on, you didn't get the whole story.
Yeah, the broadcast initially made it sound like Hamilton wasn't being entirely helpful, but yeah, they didn't display all the messages. But the interesting message, I think, was the last one from Hamilton when his engineer said, you need to let the pass has to happen. You need to do the pass. And Hamilton said, I will tell you when this pass is going to happen. It was basically saying, no, you're not telling me what to do. I will tell you what's going to happen. Very interesting.
So with that, I think it's a great opportunity to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll actually go through the order of how we finished the race, and then the changed order of how we finished the race, how that looked in regards to our predictions, how well the four of us did. And so we'll be back with you in just a few moments. Welcome back to the Downshift and our review of the China Grand Prix for 2025. We've seen this as being the second round for the rookies. Swags, what were your thoughts on the rookies?
Oh, the rookies. If we start with Lawson, we'll be here all night, I suppose. But lap 16 was good for him because he was in front of Verstappen. So that was probably his best lap. But yeah, no, the rookies have done all right. Both the Haas cars are in the points, so they're doing all right there. And except for Doohan had a few investigations against him yesterday. So he's probably getting a little bit, I don't know, maybe getting a bit cocky or just not understanding the bit of race etiquette. He came in pretty hot on one of those corners, though. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Made a rookie mistake.
From Tish.
I know we're talking about rookies in general, but I know we're talking about all the rookies. But I just wonder, Lawson's obviously getting a lot of media at the moment, but I wonder if Lawson wasn't driving in a Red Bull, whether we'd be talking quite as much about him. Like if he was driving a Kick Sauber or a Haas car and doing what he's doing, whether we'd be having the same conversations about this or everyone would be talking about it. Because, I feel like he's got a hard ass what he's doing.
I think if he was driving another car, he would be finding it easier and far closer to his teammate. I think that Red Bull car is very difficult to extract the most out of. On the weekend, he started from pit lane because apparently Red Bull completely changed his setup to try and make that car a bit softer, less edgy. They just went in a completely different direction just to try it out and get some data. Obviously, he said it didn't work. You couldn't get any more speed out of the thing, but they got a lot of data from it. So the performance, you can't look at his performance yesterday and say that it was the same car as Max and look where he finished, because it wasn't the same car that Max had.
The problem is a lot of people are looking at it like that, though, and sort of already talking about, how long is he going to be there for and is he going to last? But if that's the case with the car, that means that Red Bull are going to struggle to get anyone to get into that car and drive it, unless they're the likes of Verstappen. And there's probably no one else in the field that's not already on a secure, good contract that's going to sign up for that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they had Perez, who was a known quantity and reasonably close to Max in that car. The other option was possibly Ricciardo, who had a lot of experience in the past and maybe could drive a car that's that pointy and edgy well. But, they'll have plenty of options, but are any of them going to be able to be any good? I just can't see that. Can't see that they've got that many good options. Yuki might do okay, but who knows? How do we know he's going to go better than Lawson? Because Lawson matched him at VCARB. And why would you chuck out Lawson? Why would you chuck out Lawson before Suzuka, which is a track he knows well and has raced at in Super Formula? That's going to be a much more comfortable track for him to go to.
And looking from Yuki's point of view, why would he want to do that? Because he seems to be doing okay in the Racing Bulls car.
He's had a great start to the season.
Yeah. I think Hadjar, speaking of rookies, but Hadjar's giving Yuki a bit of a test. Hadjar's looking really good, and he's brand new in from F2. Did really well, speaking of rookies.
If you look at Red Bull, and this is the thing, is there's essentially three things that can happen here, and they've done all three. I mean, you're going to give a driver the opportunity to go for the long run, and we saw that with Checo, that he was given more and more opportunities to prove himself, and to the end it didn't work out, and Red Bull had signed him for another 2-year contract. So it was a very expensive exercise. And you look at Ted on Sky, really got into Christian around, gee, you've gone and paid Checo out to bring Lawson in, and that just doesn't seem to have worked. And Christian uncomfortably sort of got through the question. But, do you see this with Lawson as well, that Red Bull will give him the opportunity, a longer-term opportunity to prove himself? And Christian's gone on record saying that a driver needs 3 years to really prove themselves. Or do you knock him back to the second teams, knock him back to the Racing Bulls, bring Yuki up, and to your point is Yuki could get up there and have just as many problems as Lawson has in that car as well? Or do you just drop him completely and bring in one of the reserve drivers? And we've seen Red Bull do this countless times, and no sort of method to the madness in regards to the decision they make.
Can we cover that in more depth next episode?
Sounds like a great idea.
Other rookies, how do we think they went, KT? You were keeping an eye on a couple of them yesterday.
Really impressed with Antonelli. I mean, while still a bit messy, I mean, you saw him coming into some of those corners and just picking up the gravel. He loves to be able to really push it hard and isn't afraid to take it over the edge. He's just showing great performance. And so for the touted rookie that is coming up through the ranks that everyone was talking about being the next Schumacher or the next Hamilton, he's cutting his teeth really well, proving his worth. You saw that he finished 8th, and then with the disqualification of Leclerc and Hamilton put him up to 6th. So really impressed with what he's doing there. And Behrman, Ollie, finishing off at 8th as well. So he's done really well, bringing points in for the Haas as well.
It's worth mentioning that Antonelli, although he finished 40-odd seconds behind George Russell, after the race he was told that the floor damage he picked up on lap 1 was apparently costing him up to 0.4 of a second per lap. So to still finish in that position, I thought Antonelli was excellent. So I can see why Toto seems to be in love with him. But he's going to work well in that team.
Yeah, Toto's got George to keep him happy at the front and give Antonelli enough time to just, build slowly on his part.
Is that Handsome George we're talking about there, Dan?
George, yeah. Handsome George.
Handsome George.
Right.
Handsome George.
Handsome.
Have you won a bet by putting that in there, Dan?
Maybe. I don't know. How many times did we mention it? Was it twice? 3 times? I think if I say Handsome George 4 times, it works. So just checking there.
All in all, I thought the rookies did quite well. Bortoletto finished ahead of Hulkenberg. He did pretty well, even though they both made mistakes at the start. And Jack, they'll give him some time, I guess, at Alpine. I don't think they're going to look at replacing him soon, but yeah, Lawson will be
They're certainly not
mark.
the worst drivers on the circuit.
No, they've been very good so far.
And they haven't had, diabolical crashes like we're all expecting them to.
Yeah, they've kept it pretty clean. And the only one, the concern around is also Doohan for Alpine. So, given the fact that you'd be wanting to see Jack performing a lot better than he is, again, he really needs to earn and hold that seat. Unfortunately, with the performance he's doing so far, it's not looking like it's a positive position for him.
I think he'd have to be pretty happy at the moment, though, because at the start of the season, before he'd even got in the car at round 1, everyone's talking about how Colapinto might kick him out in 5 rounds' time and all this sort of palaver. And then since then, we've had, obviously, the wet race at Melbourne, everything's going on. There's heaps of that race news around. This race was all about, is Lawson going to get replaced? And, the Ferraris get DQ'd. So everyone's forgotten about Doohan. And if the rumour that Colapinto might actually end up replacing Liam Lawson, highly unlikely, then Colapinto's out of the picture. So Jack's probably safe. So Jack is probably happy. Like they say, you're only as good as your last race. We've had 1 race, and look how the news has changed.
Yeah, all the rookies are happy that Lawson's the talk of the town right now.
100%.
But the Alpine cars probably aren't that fast anyway, are they? In terms of, the other one's not going that well. He was struggling.
Well, they're not
yesterday.
fighting for the front.
No, they showed some good potential in Melbourne. So I think it's just it's getting the balance right and getting the most out of their package. But they didn't look too bad. I didn't actually see Doohan's interview after the race, so I don't know how he found the car and the tyres, but they didn't seem too happy with their result.
So with that, it gives us the opportunity to start to look at the finishing order of for the race. So if we go, obviously, Oscar, which hubby and I are celebrating with our McLaren Papaya army. Oscar hitting first place, which was just fantastic to see after Melbourne. And of course, with Oscar sharing that he's got some lineage to have some Chinese heritage. So
1/16 or something?
1/16th. So his second home race. So to see him win that, following in second
Not
was
a stretch at all, really.
not a stretch. Following with Lando Norris and then George Russell in third. We then had Max in fourth, Ocon in fifth, Antonelli in sixth, Albon, who was celebrating his birthday on the weekend, in seventh, Ollie in eighth, Lance Stroll in ninth, and Carlos Sainz bringing in the last points for Williams in 10th. So if we look at that, we then go to our predictions. So do you remember what we predicted, boys?
I will
Oh,
get
even in
nothing.
the
I
vicinity,
don't think
to
I
be
had
sure.
enough faith in Oscar from memory.
No, you didn't,
I
Hubby.
think I did. I think
So-
I did.
Look, we had Schwags. You were going for the Hail Mary. You had Max taking pole and first, followed by Oscar and then Charles. Happy, you also didn't put faith in Oscar, so you had Lando at pole, followed with Lando at first, followed by Oscar and then Max.
So I got the top two. They were just reversed. So we don't even get half points for that?
no.
You get
Who
spot, you get
invented
zero,
this?
nothing.
No.
Who
Well,
invented
negative
this?
points.
Oh,
We
my
all agreed to
goodness.
it when we first started doing
Wow.
this. So yeah,
What did we?
I've got your signature. It's all fine. It's all legal. It's all good.
silence was acceptance. So Lockie, to your point, so both you and I, we had faith in our local boy, and so we both had Oscar for pole. We also had Oscar for first place. We both had Lando for second place, and we differed on third place, which I had Max and you had Charles. So we both didn't get points there. So where that puts us for the downshift leaderboard, a bit of a shift. So going back from previously, we'll start from last to go up to first. So Schwags sitting down at the bottom with 2 points.
It hasn't changed for Dan.
Holding you up.
He's still down the bottom.
It can only get better from here, hopefully. Happy, you and I are equal second with 9 points each, which means, Lockie, with 10 points, you've taken the lead.
If we could just stop the season now, I'd like to get off. That'd be fine.
I think Lawson's
No,
with you there.
definitely not. So as we look at that in regards to how the teams have gone, and I'm sorry, it helps if I don't stuff up the spreadsheet. But as we look at the standings, sorry.
Just change my results. They were wrong anyway. I
Just
think you
change your-
misheard me.
Did you want no points at all, Dan?
Do we want to go back to the transcript?
Oh.
So as we're seeing for the teams, so we've now got McLaren sitting in first place in the Constructors' Championship with 78 points, Mercedes at 57 points, followed by Red Bull at 36, Williams at 17, Ferrari at 17, so both equal fourth, followed by Haas at 14, Aston Martin at 10, and Kick Sauber at 8. Racing Bulls at 9, and Alpine, the only team not to score so far, sitting in 10th place.
Who would have picked
Williams.
Kick Sauber and Haas to be up there at this point of the season? Come on.
And
let's be
Williams equal fourth. Very good.
honest. Exactly.
Are we happy with that?
McLaren with a big lead.
Very much so. And really, when you look at it, I think we all had Haas and Kick Sauber being 10th and 9th, depending on which order we put it at. So
Yeah. Look at the 26.
very big difference. So
Yeah, I think Alpine would have to be pretty disappointed at the moment, having no points down there in 10th place for sure.
I
okay.
can't imagine there's too much happy feeling down there at the moment. So
No.
No, so look, great conversation starters for our next episode, which will be airing on Thursday. So you can join us for episode 12 on Thursday, where we'll do a little bit more of a review of the teams, the drivers, and basically what's going on behind the scenes. For now, this has been the Downshift. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next lap. That's the checkered flag for this episode of the Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Want to take it to the next level? Join the Downshift Pit Crew by supporting us through Patreon. You'll get exclusive content and help fuel the show to keep us pushing flat out every week. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.